Mesechta Zevachim Daf Dalid Amud Aleph, and we're starting from the top of Dalid Amud Aleph. Let's get started. From where do we know that one needs Zvicha Lishma? What does Zvicha mean? Zvicha means Shchita. So from where do we know that Min HaTorah, when somebody shechs a korban, the Shchita has to be with the kavanah of that korban, and if he doesn't have the kavanah of that korban, it's not kosher. So it says in the pasuk, Zevach Shlomim Korbanai. So you have an extra word here, Zevach. It should have said Ve'im Shlomim Korbanai. What's the Zevach? Oh, so he said it good. So the Zevach has come to tell you that the shechting has to be l'shem shlamim. Zevach means that korban sometimes also. Amen. In fact, maybe the name of this korban is called Zevach Shlamim. It's one thing. So you want to know? It doesn't say as dam Zevach Hashlamim. So you see, it's called Shlamim itself, or it says Azoirek es dam Hashlamim. It doesn't say Zevach Shlamim. It doesn't say the word Zevach. So it's an extra word. Shmamina shetehei zvicha l'shem shlamim. That the zvicha has to be l'shem shlamim. Says Gemara Ashkechan zvicha. You answered very well. From where we know shchita has to be l'shem shlamim. Abashar avodas you have the Kabbalah. Kabbalah is nothing but mishach the behemoth. So there's somebody that's there to be mekabel the blood from the behemoth. Then you have hilacha, the kohen that brings it to the mizbeach. Right. Then you have zrika, was mavaft. So what about all those other avodas? But no, how do you know it has to be lishma? Says you want to chita him a little bit zvicha. If you can say, oh, learn out from shchita, just like shchita is lishma. All the others, zvicha is also avodah, so all the other ones are similar. Says you want to have zvicha. Yeah, it should work like a domino, maybe. So he says, no, it can't. If somebody shechted with the kavanah for somebody, for a korban pesach, with the kavanah for somebody who's not even shaykh to eat, l'mashal, somebody, he's sick, he's an old person. Huh? No, nicht tamei. Aber kann nicht essen kein Kezayis. He can't eat a Kezayis. And by Korban Pesach, everybody has to eat a Kezayis. And he had in mind when he shared the Korban Pesach for this guy who's not Shaykh. So we say the Korban Pesach is possible. But that's only by Shchita. By all the other Avedis, if he had in mind for this sick person, it would be kosher. So I'll say, Dafke, where do you have to have it Lishma? By Shchita, because the Torah was so machmir that if he had the kavanah for a chayla that's not shaykh to eat a kezayis, it's possible, versus the other ones that's not so chamor, it'll still be kosher. So that's why we said it has to be big kavanah of lishma. So how do we know talking the other avedus? Only because it says in the pasuk, hamakriv is dam hashlomim. This makriv is, you find hamakriv by kabbalas adam, and you find hamakriv by hilachas adam. Normally hamakriv means to bring the dam close to the mizbech. That's hilacha. Here it's going on Kabbalah, because it's V'shachatz Adam, if you read the beginning of the Pasuk, and then it says Hamakriv. Kabbalah Sheitei, Kabbalah L'Shem Shlamim. No, Kabbalah, you receive it in the Kli, and then he has to bring that blood towards the Mizbeach. Then he takes on on the opposite corners, he throws on this corner, it goes on two sides, and then he throws on this corner, it goes on the other. The kohen. Shchita could be even by azar. Okay, we'll talk about that soon. But here it says Befedish, it says in the pasuk Hamakir is dam hashlamim. It says Hamakir. It shouldn't have said the word shlamim. We know we're talking that Parsha is talking about shlamim. Yeah, so it should have said Hamakir as damai, that he's bringing the dam. Why does he have to say shlamim? Hey, Kabbalah l'shem shlamim. It's in order to teach you that the Kabbalah has to be l'shem shlamim with the lishma. Lishma. Right. So now, Kabbalah says, let us write just by Kabbalah, which is not as chamor or as shchita, but later shchita be not. Let us learn just a pasuk. Kabbalah has to be lishma, like Hamakav is dam hashlamim. It says there extra word shlamim, and learn shchita v'mit. What do I need a pasuk for shchita? What do I need psukim for anything? So what are you talking about? Mada Kabbalah, which is much lighter. It's not puzzling when he had by Korban Pesach. If by the Kabbalah he had a mind for somebody who's not Shakti Kazayis, it wouldn't be puzzle. And by Shchita it would be puzzle. And by Kabbalah, which is lighter, you say you need Kavanah. Well, you need Lishma, so too by Shchita.
So light is when it's lighter.
And you need Lishma for sure by the Chama. So he says, we can slug it up. Malak Kabbalah, she gave Sula business Zar, V'isha. Kabbalah is more Chama. Because Kabbalah, who could we see the blood? Only a Kohen. By Shchita, a Zar, or even a Frui, even a Isha could do the Shchita. Yeah. I don't know, Mila, she's officially good. Yeah. We learned from the Gemara that she can do Mila. Yeah. So Gemara, Ashkechon Shchita with Kabbalah. So you found a pasuk, Psukim for Shchita because it says Zevach, and by Kabbalah you had the meaning of Shlomin, the extra word Shlomin. So Shchita and Kabbalah. So Zerika Minallah. How do we know Zerika has to be Lishma? Everything going to say, let's learn it out from Shchita and Kabbalah. Says Malahani. The Shchita and Kabbalah came to the suffering. It needs dafka has a chumrah that has to be in the tzafim by the Azora, close to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, right next to the Mizbeach. And we find the inyan of Shchita v'Kabbalah even when by the Mizbeach HaPnimis. The Mizbeach Hazav, that there was Shchita and there was Kabbalah, but there was no Zerika. So you see, Shchita and Kabbalah are stronger because it's in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, even by the Mizbeach HaPnimi, which Zika was not. And the Shchita and the Kabbalah had to be, you remember there was rings where they would put the behema and shachted, they put the head of the behema in a ring. Those rings where they put the behemoths was next to the Mizbeach, towards Safan. Only Shchita and Kabbalah was by Safan, because right by the Shchita you have Kabbalah. They cut the neck and right away the blood comes out. You have to have the kli to receive it. Before they start walking with the blood, but you have to get the blood. So it's right after the Shechita is the Kabbalah of the blood. So that happened with Tzafin. But the Zika did not happen with Tzafin. So the Yimana El Amakra, so there's a Chumrah, so I need for Zika Pasuk. El Amakra, it says in the Pasuk, Hazirei, it's not Hashlamim. It says one who sprays the blood of a Shlamim. From the word Dam Hashlamim, it didn't have to say Hashlamim here either. It should have said Damai. We're talking this whole Pasha, Shlamim. Again, Shlamim is extra. Shehei Zika, L'Shem Shlamim. The Zika has to be L'Shem Shlamim. In fact, you want to B'lichtiv, Rachmana B'Zika B'Leilach Minah. Right by Zika, Zika is the most lenient. Doesn't have to be in Safin, doesn't have to be in... and it has to be L'Shma, for sure the other three. Says, no, Mishum Nikalu Mifrach, I can slug up. I tell you, Zika has a Chumrah. Mala Zika, Shekei Chayv Ala Zar. Misa. By Zika, if a Zar takes the blood and he splashes it on the Mizbeach, it's Chayv Misa. Wow. But all the other ones not. All the ones, if he does any of the Aveda, Shchita can even be done by a Zar, L'chatchila. But the Kabbalah, B'hilach, if it's done by a Zar, he's not Chayv Misa. So it's Gemara Ashkan and Chulu, Yitaka found, by all of them, a Makar, it has to be Zika, Shchita, and Kabbalah. Hilach Menana. How do we know the Hilacha? The one was not fitting to the Mizbeach, the one that has to leave the blood. So if you're going to say, okay, let us learn it out from Shchita, Kabbalah, Mitzika. Let us learn it out from there. So you can't. Malakulu, she can't avoid she has levatla. Those three has to take place by every carbon. You have to have Shchita, Kabbalah. You don't need a Hilacha, Kabbalah and Zika. Hilacha can sich treffen mit Tema, Hilacha shevs levatla. If you were standing right by the Mizbeach and he shechted him, you did Kabbalah. So you don't have to go nowhere. Just go. That's it. You spray over here, you spray there. You don't have to make a ganze mahalach. Asivuv. Yeah, that's the right word. Asivuv. That's the shmachim. So there's a kula in Hilach. So I would have thought Hilach dafshul zayin l'shma. That's why he's asking. So where's the makkah? You need a pasuk. So, and that's why you can't learn it out from the other three. It says in the pasuk, "Vehikriv hakoyin as hakoil." I'm reading the words that are missing. Vehikriv mizbecha, and it has to be burnt on the mizbech. This vehikriv is a hilacha. And vehikriv normally means halacha because
Vehikriv
this
has
is
to
a
be
vehikriv is right before the vehikter. What happens before you burn it? Somebody had to bring it there. That's the halacha. So vehikriv. Also vehikriv is called Kabbalah because vehikriv came right after the shechita. But the hikriv, the normal taich of the hikriv is halacha. Zu halacha seibarim lakevesh. This is the bringing the limbs to the ramp of the mizbeach. Says Gemara V'Tanya, and we learned in the Braisa. Look, ve'ikrivu zu kabbalah sabdam. Before we learned, where it says the pasuk v'shachat, it says over there v'shachat zman ha'pakal lefnei Hashem ve'ikrivu. So right after the shechita, straight ve'ikrivu there means kabbalah, right? That's kabbalah sabdam. Look, the Torah used by Kabbalah, we learned by the Kabbalah Saddam, it says the extra word shlamim, right? So from the extra word shlamim, we learned that it has to be lishma. But which lashon do we use? Vehikriv, a lashon vahilacha, even though we were learning for Kabbalah. Vehikriv, there was Kabbalah, but he used the lashon vahilacha. Why did he learn it that way? Why did he learn the limud of a Kabbalah in a lashon of a hikriv, which is normally halacha, to tell you the halacha loy takim Kabbalah, that halacha don't take it out of Kabbalah, that tied up by the hip. It's like Adam and Chava one. Here also, if Kabbalah needs lishma, automatically halacha. It's like they're connected by the hips. We find takashina b'kodesh. You find perfect that by shina b'kodesh, when it comes to a carbon, that when you shech the carbon l'shem, you designate it for a chatos. If you didn't have a l'shma the chatos, you have l'shma the eil, it's going to be puzzle, right?
He has to bring another one.
He has to bring another one. We know all these the shechita, the Kabbalah, the hilach, and the zika is by the carbon, by the cheftza itself. How about shina bailim? Shina bailim is nicht in the cheftza. He had a different kavanah. It was the carbon is the same carbon, but he had a mind for kapara for another person. Reuven put a set away a chatas. So the chatas was supposed to go for Reuven, and he gave it to the kohen. Reuven gave it to the kohen, and the kohen takes the chatas, and he has a mind for Shimon. The kohen has a mind for Shimon. So what happens then? How do we know it has to be lishma by shinui bailim? Till now, we only spoke about the behemoth itself. In the behemoth, you had the wrong kavanah. Now we're talking about, no, not the behemoth is the same behemoth. The chatas is a chatas, but the kohen, instead of having a mind for Reuven, who gave him the carbon, he had a mind for Shimon. So how do you know you have to have kavanah there? Minola. I mean, it says Zevach toidas shlama. Shetahei zvicha. It says Zevach. It says the extra word Zevach. It should have said ubisa toidas shlama. What's the Zevach? Nacha mala Zevach. Very good. Nacha extra word Zevach. Shetahei zvicha. The shechita is l'shem toida. So for that we don't need the first Zevach.
So he can't change it.
Yeah, but that we know for the carbon itself has to be dafka l'shem toida, not l'shem another carbon. That we learned that from the first zevach. So so now we have an extra zevach. We don't need it for shina kodesh that he had in mind in the carbon for another carbon. We don't need it. We already learned it out from the first zevach. So what do we do? This is one of the 32 midas that the Torah is nedreshes. There's 32. There's 32 midas that the Torah is nedeshes, but that Rebbe Lezer had enumerated. It says over here, he asks mishleishim u'shtayim hamidas she'atorah nedeshes b'hem. That's 13 Rabbi Yishmael. I'm talking about Rebbe Lezer. She'nimnu b'brayis she'Rebbe Lezer b'noish Rabbi Yisrael Glili. Okay, anyway, so if you can't use it for Shinui Kodesh, because Shinui Kodesh we already learned from the other Zevach, so you use it for the next Shinui. What's the Shinui? Shinui Bailim. That you have to have the Kavanah by Shinui Bailim. In fact, what about Hayla Hachiyudi also? Does this pasuk come to teach us, this Zevach, this actual word Zevach is coming to teach us Shinui Bailim? No, we need it for a different limud. It says, Zevach Teitul Shlamim, Abba Chonin Oimem Meshum Rebbe Lezer. Abba Chonin said in the name of Rebbe Lezer. What is this? Zevach coming to teach us? Bala Lamed. Toidesh Heshechot L'Shem Shlamim. a Toida that was slaughtered for the sake of a Shlamim, it's Ksheira. But if it was the reverse, Shlamim Sheshchat L'Shem Toida, if he set aside a Shlamim, and he had in mind for a Toida, then it's going to be Psulin. If you did a Toida L'Shem Shlamim, it's Kasher. Why? Because Shlamim is a klolis dikan nomen, a klolis dikan name, a general name. In it, there's also levels in Shlamim. Toida is part of a Shlamim. Toida is one of the levels in Shlamim. So if he had in mind by the Toida for Shlamim, it's going to be Kasher. But Shlamim is the klal. Toida is al kein shkaprat. Shlamim is not included in Toida. You have to thank Hashem if you made it over water, or you came out of somebody came out of jail, but came well. Thanks, thanking Hashem for freeing him from jail.
Save his life.
Save his life. Correct. So said Gemara, Omar Hafiz Meisel is that what's the difference if he had in mind when he separated a Toida for Shlamim, it's kosher. But if it's the reverse, Shlamim, that's not why. I told you the answer, but here he says, Toida Kriya Shlamim. Toida is one of the levels in Shlamim. So when he had in mind Toida for Shlamim, that's fine. But the ain't Shlamim Kriya Toida. Shlamim is a general thing. It's not, a general doesn't go into a prat. So therefore, it's not included in Toida. So if he had in mind when he separated for Shlamim for Toida, it's not going to be Yetzer. Says the Gemara, after the Gemara, that, we learn it out from Zevach.
The extra was Zevach.
From the extra with Zevach, that the Shine Boilim. Where do we learn the drasha of Abba Bachonin? We don't learn it out from the word Zevach. We learn it out from Toidas Shlamov. It said Toidas Shlamov. Why did it say Toidas Shlamov? It says Shlamim. Toida. Right. So what do you need Toida? So to tell you, Toida is a chelik from Shlamim.
So you don't need the word Zevach then?
No. So Zevach is telling for Shinoi Boilim. That's how we conclude it goes for Shinoi Boilim. In fact, what about Chatme Boile? We still need the Zevach for a different drasha. He says, what drasha? Chatas v'osham enayim. How do we know Chatas v'osham that it's eaten on the day that they were makiv the carbon and that night? No more. How do we know it? Talmud Leima Zevach. We learn it out from the extra word Zevach.
But you can't let over food up to tomorrow?
No, you have to have that day of the carbon and the night. We learned it out from Toida.
Oh, we learned before that also. You can't have
Some carbon, it's only that day and the night. What was the reason by Toida they did it? Because by Toida, you have to finish it right away. And the Toida was a big behemoth.
So you can't eat so much?
You can't eat so much. They used to want it. When you thank Hashem, so Mamachna goes a party. Invite a whole bunch of people.
So then you'll be able to finish it.
And so then you'll be able to finish it. But Zainah, Toida Hashem, B'tzibur. That's better. That's better, yeah. In fact, Yibarim came, if so, Dichtiv Krov, Sa, Toida Shlom of Zevach. He says, if he's out to tell you that that it's for a day and a night, so you should have said all three, Sar, Toida Ushlamov, and then say Zevach, V'yain Kabana Ya'achel. The Zevach, the Kam Yeshida that day. But what to tell you, Zevach is close to Achila, that right by the Shechita has to be the Achila right away and that night. Why does it say the word Zevach before Toida Ushlamov? Shmami no Tarte, he wants to tell you two things. Zevach, first of all, to tell you one day and one night. And this, that he changed the order and he put the Zevach before Toida Ushlamov, because normally it should be Toida Ushlamov, Zevach, the Shechita, Nachtam Achila. But what did he do? He put the Zevach, the carbon. That's not. It's like the Shechita. Then he says Toida Ushlamov, Nachtam Achila. It's a opposite Seder. Why did he do such a Seder? To tell you two things. Zevach is teaching you Shin and Bailam has to be Lishma, and Zevach is telling you that you has to be eaten that day and night. Ashkechon Zvicha says, you found perfect. You found for Zvicha that it has to be Lishma by Shinui Bailam. How about Shara B'Tzman Nolan? How do we know if he had in mind a different person? How do you know Kabbalah, Hilacha, Zika has to be Lishma? Says, you want to chitay a little bit Zika. If you can say, let's learn out from Zika, it's a repetition like before. Says, you want to Mahala Zika, she came Pesach, Shalei L'Shem Eichlim, the Pesach. She can learn how from Shchita because Shchita has a chumrah. If he had in mind a person who's not shaykh to eat a kezayis, the carbon is possible. Mashayin can the other avodah is kosher. So I'll say Taf Kedir has to be Lishma. Then the Zvicha b'Shinei Kodesh says, I'll tell you how. It says Zvicha by Shinei Kodesh. Shinei Kodesh means that in the Chefza, in the Behemoth itself, he had the wrong kavanah. Instead of a Chayla, he had in mind Chatas. So that we know all four avodas, right? But we already know from Zvicha, the first avodah by Shinei HaKodesh has to be Lishma, and by Shinei HaKodesh we know not just Zvicha, but the other three. So we'll say the name is Zvicha b'Shinei Bailam, and we also have the extra word Zevach by Shinei Bailam. So we'll say, Ma Zvicha b'Shinei Kodesh leichalakt b'Zvicha l'shar avodas, just like by the Zvicha by Shinei Kodesh, by the Chefza of the animal. If he had the wrong kavanah, you said it refers to all the avodas. Zvicha b'Shinei Bailam, so to the Zvicha which is said by Shinei Bailam, leitechel b'hem b'Zvicha l'shar avodas. We shouldn't be able to differentiate between Shchita and the other avodas. In fact, you want to equal mitzvah. That's not. You can't learn it out. Just because you find Mahal Shina Kodesh. Shina Kodesh has chumras. Shekem Psulas Begufay. Where was the Shina by Shina Kodesh? In the Chetz, the Behima Aleina Gemacht Apsul. He said he put it away for Ayla, and he said now it's a Chatas. So in the Guf is Gemacht Apsul. By Shina Bailim, there was no Psul in the Chetza. It's the same Chatas, but he had in mind somebody else. It's not the Guf. Now it's the Bailim. No, we're saying again, Shinui Kodesh and Shina Bailim, the difference is, Shina Kodesh is the wrong kavanah in the Chefza. So it's the Guf of the animal. Oh, sure, same thing, right. Mashay Shina Bailim, it's the same Chatas, it's just for another person. That's one. Yes, no Abavidis. And Shanei Abavidis, like we said before, Shina Bailim is not shined by all Abavidis. Shina Bailim, the only way it becomes possible by Shina Bailim is if he had in mind when for the Zrika, when he was shachting. Shachting alone is not going to pass. It's not Shina Bailim. No, it's not going to be Shina Bailim. When does the Shina Bailim take an effect and make it possible? If he had in mind that the Zika should be for another person. The Zika is the only part that will passel.
And the Shchita
Not only if in the Shchita he had in mind that the Zika, while he was shachting, that when he's going to do a Zika, it's going to be for another person. Then the result, right. Right. Here he says, all of them that by Shinui, by Shinui Kodesh is you need all the four avodas, right, in order to effect that it should be possible, but not by Shina Bailim, only by Ziko. Even Shchita with the Kavanah, he had in mind when he was shachting that the Zika should go for another person. Das is Shina Kodesh. The income gufa, that's one chilik. Another chilik is the other one by Shina Kodesh. Any of the avodas could passel it. Mashain came by Shina Bailim only Zrika, and he says the shchita is only if shachat amanah shem Zrika yiskape bayache. Okay, v'yesh nalach hamisa, and he says if the misa, if a person designated a carbon and he died, right? So if he died, so the Yiddish could be makavit, and or any person could be makavit. It's not Shina Bailim because the Bailim are not around. So it could be anybody could do it. But by Shina Kodesh, nobody could do it. I mean, it becomes possible. Shina Kodesh, even if the guy died. That means if somebody designated a carbon and he died, so that could go to, there's no more Shina Bailim. But there's Shina Kodesh. The East of Shina Kodesh still exists. If he has in mind, let's say the guy who does. Where? By which one? By Shina Kodesh, it's possible. It depends which carbon it is. But Eilov HaChatas will be possible. He's not Yoitzer with the carbon. That means a carbon tzibur, you cannot do Shina Kodesh. But a carbon
How's
tzibur,
there Shila by Alaka?
because if the person died, the Yodish could use that carbon for himself, or anybody else could, or anybody
So
else.
there's no problem in the
No bialim. There's no bialim.
There's no problem in the test itself. It's just
No, it's just a
Not
bialim.
possible, it's
So he's in
kosher.
place.
kosher.
In other words, the son's carried down who?
Yeah, or it doesn't have to be the son. It says anybody. But yes, no, but tzibur can be yachid, and he says that tzibur is like a yachid, meaning a carbon tzibur in shina you can't change. For if you designate it, you put away the animal for a chatas, and you're now changing it for a eila. Even by a tzibur, it's not going to be good. But if you have a mind for one person and then you have a mind for another person by a tzibur, everybody's part of that behemoth, so it doesn't matter. It's a tzibur. Doesn't make a difference. Says he says even though two of the chilukim lav dafke is a real chilik, but two of them is dafke. Which two are not a chilik? He says, what's the reason that you said by shine bailam it shouldn't be a psul begufay? Because machshav b'alma, because it was tama machshav. He had a mind for another person, but the carbon is the same. So shine kodesh nami, the way he had a mind when he put it away for chatas, and then he had a mind for Ayla, that was just a machshava b'almu. So it's also keeping the achshava. You say pasla or chanami, keeping the achshava pasla. It should be pasla the same way. Your whole head was because it's just machshava. But if you say machshava passes it, so just like machshava passes by shina kodesh, it should pass by shina b'alam. That's so. Therefore, it's not a real chilik. The first one, and the chilik that you gave, if the owner died, then anyone else can be makavit. Says Yimana, that's not according to everybody. Pinchas b'rei money. Yes, shinim b'alam la'achamisa. There is shinim b'alam because Pinchas b'rei money holds that the yodesh takes the place of the father, and if they had a mind for another person other than the yodesh, then it's possible. It's called shinim b'alam la'achamisa. Only the Pinchas. We're talking about according to Pinchas. But we have two chumnes that is chilik. One is that only which of avodah could passel by shina bailam zrika, but by shina kodesh all four, right? And then if it was a tzibur, there's no shina bailam,
It's all the same.
but shina kodesh there is. So there's two vagike chilukim between shina kodesh and shina bailam. So therefore, you need to have a pasuk for shinui bailam. Allah Rabashi Amakra. Only Rabashi says there's a pasuk. It says when again to the oila benirtze loy lechaper alav. So we dash alav loy achavere that the zirka has to be for that person and not for the owners of the carbon, not on somebody
The
else.
zika is the kapara.
Zirka is the kapara, correct? Lahai lahachildi also says the Gemara lechaper alav is coming to teach us about zrika. Only this person is forgiven. Only if you have a mind for the owners, but if it's for somebody else, it's not a. That's not what it's coming to teach us. We need it for what we learned from Raisa. It's here. It says, only a carbon which he said harei alai. A neder is he says harei alai. So when he says harei alai, then if the behemoth gets stolen, right, or lost or stolen, he has to replace it. That's what he wants to tell you, that he's still chai b'achri yusrei. Oba b'she'ena alav, meaning a carbon nedava, which he says harei behema zu. This behema is going to be for a carbon nedava, and if it gets stolen or lost, then he has no achrayis. The achrayis was that this only for this behema. If this behema is not here, he's not mechuyev to replace
So
it.
why can't you give a different one if you say,
No,
this?
one a neder geht from Gavra. Macht a neder geht bring a
Change
carbon.
his mind.
No matter what happens, he has to bring a carbon. If this behemoth gets lost, not
Leave a zoo.
of a zoo. This is now he's saying only this carbon by the
the stone is important.
right. So as Shayna love one, but by behemoth zoo ain't a chaybrach yusay. But that's what he's come to teach us. When it's a love. My time. What's the reason? It's as if he's carrying it on his shoulders. That he's mekabel the achrayis on his shoulders. Al kapanim from the word Allah, we needed this drasha to tell you only when he says Allah he has to replace it, but if he says zu, he doesn't have to replace it. And the Gemara Rav Ashi, Benitza loy lechapekama. So Rav Ashi says that the drasha of Rav Ashi is not from the word olav. That you need it for the drasha of Rav Shimon. Olav, like we just said. Rav Shimon said this drasha. That the olav is telling you that neder, you have to replace it on another, you don't. So, but what are we learning out from? We're learning out from loy. It says, Benitza loy lechap olav. The loy is telling us loy v'loy lechaveiroi, that he has to spray the dam. Loy for the balabayas of a nishva ananda.
Every word is counts.
Every word counts, yes. So he says you found Liz v'chozika. Psukim you found for zvicha, for shchita and zrika.
So what do we learn? Zvicha, we learn from two different maniyomas.
What? Zvicha we learn out from Zevach. The extra word Zevach. Zrika, what do we learn out from? We just said from Loi. Kabbalah minolan. How do we know Kabbalah? Maybe you should learn out Kabbalah from Zvicha and Zrika. So he says, no, Mala Zvicha Zrika Sheina Bida Shechayab Mala Bachutz. Zvicha Zrika, that if you shech the carbon or you spray the blood outside the Beis HaMikdash, then he's chayiv misa or kares. Mashen king Kabbalah, if he was makabel of dam bachutz, he's not chayiv kares. So maybe by Kabbalah you don't need that it should be lishma. Rav Ashi says, as here we learn out male nazir from the ram of a nazir. The chsiv it says v'sa'ayil yaser zevach shlomim. Yaser tells us shetehei asiyosir. That means asiyosir means that all the avodah should be done l'shem shlomim, for the sake of a shlomim. So he says, in the l'shina kodesh, you don't need it for shina kodesh. The nafkalim hasam, we already learned it out from Zevach, from the by shina kodesh. We had psukim. So what do we give? Nayu. So So what do we need by El Yasa Zevach? What do we need it for? Nayu. He says you need it for shina bailam. That it has to be lishma. All these avodas. Say Yasa is a klal. Let's learn it as a klal prat. Yasa is mashal. All the asiyas, all the avodas have to be done. Zevach lishma. Yeah. Zevach prat, which means only the avodah of zvicha, meaning the avodah of shchita, has to be lishma for the Bible. Klal prat. So now you have only a klal and a prat. And the halacha is ein b'chlal al mashal b'prat. So then that means zvicha imidachin alay. That means only shchita has to be l'shem bailam. All the other everything else not. You don't need it l'shem bailam. That's what he wants to say. Says you can't say that. He says if it would say yasa shlomim, then it would kid the comment. Then it's a klal prat. Hashtem chsid yasa, which is the klal, but it's not finishing the klal. Yasa has to say you should do the Avedas, and it doesn't say what. Then he says Zevach. It should say, what would be the Yasa Shlomim would be, you have to have the specific Yasa Shlomim. But instead you have a half-sick with the word Zevach in between. It says Yasa Zevach Shlomim. So Havalei Klal Shein Emoli. It's a klal that's not complete. A klal, in order to be complete, it has to have the specifics. It says Yasa, then it says Zevach. It can mean anything. Who knows what it is? If it said Yasa Shlomim, that's a complete klal. So the whole klal shein amali ain't done. It's a klal prat. We don't use and we don't consider it as a klal prat. So what
happens? You don't do anything.
No, so it's not where you learn it out from. Ravina said you don't use it as a klal prat. Rather, Yasa is an extra word to tell us all the avids have to be lishma. He says even if it's not a klal malay, it's still a klal. But he says there's also a klal prat. It's not just a klal prat. There's also a klal. Lashem says Lashem chazal klal. So to tell you keina prat that everything needs aveda. How could you say it's a klal prat to klal? The klal prat, the two klalim have to be equal. Why is it not equal? Klal kama mabasiyes v'sulay. The first klal is only referring to the shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zika. Yeah. But the klal basra, kol la Hashem, is vafilu shvichas shirayim. That means even the remaining blood,
The leftover.
what do you do with that? You have to pour down the Yisod of the Mizbeach, which is after the Zika. And then you have after that, the Haktoris Eimurin. You have to burn the fats. So these two klalim are not equal, so you can't call it a klal prat klal. So Ravina answers, "How tanu devei Rabbi Yishmael bechlalu prati darish kehai gavna." But we find in another place there was a tana from the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Yishmael that did darshan it as a klal prat klal, even though the klalim are not similar. So and he says klal prat dana ilata dana prat. When you have a klal prat klal, you only do kena prat. Ma prat mefayrish avoda, just like the shchita and the avoda of all the four avodas. Ubeina lishmar, and it also has to be done lishmar. After avoda from the four avodas of dam, also ubeina lishmar has to be done lishmar. Okay, so in fact, you want ima prat mefayrish. That's avoda b'chayav malach b'chutz. That if he shechted kachim outside the Beis Hamikdash, he's chayav kares. So he says, look, the prat, you're talking about shchita. You want to learn out from everything is keina prat. What's the prat? Zevach, shchita. But shchita, if you shechted outside, outside the Beis Hamikdash, you're chayav kares. After avodah b'chayav malach b'chutz, we should say all the other avodas, you should also be chayav outside. According to this, that we only know shchitu zika in only shchitu zika has the din of bailim. That has to be l'shem bailim, because we're learning keina prat. Only which ones are going to be shayich to be chayiv kares if it was done outside the Beis Hamikdash. Sure it is. If it was done b'chutz, it's kares. And the only two is shchita and zika. And we said klal upratu klal, iyatadon elakena prat, and the prat is shchita, and just like shchita is has a prat that if it's shechta outside you chayiv kares, it has to be something similar to it. The only one that's similar to it that will be chayiv bechutz kares is rika, kabbalah ilach alay, but kabbalah ilach anad, inami or mahaprat mefedish. You'll say just like the prat shchita is davar haton sofan. Has to be something that has to be done in the tzafan of the hazar v'yesh mechatois pnimi. Avkal aton tzafan yesh mechatois pnimi. Shchita v'kabbalah in. The only ones that have tzafan and also done in the chatois hapnimi is only shchita v'kabbalah. Those are the two avos. Those are done by the tzafan, and those two are done by the mizbeach hapnimi. Zika loy. But Zika not, so maybe we should exclude Zika. Since you could learn a miyut to be memayit Zika, or you could also be memayit Kabbalah b'hilacha. So since we don't know, it's ambiguous, we don't know which one to be memayit. Says v'yavayish name, so we'll include all of them because it's equal. Lishnachrina, another lashon is v'chada take b'milsa. Since they're equal, it's almost the same thing. See, since each of these two Avedas, Kabbalah and Zika, are very chashuv, they're like equal status, so we leave it in its place. If you want, I can really learn out. Really, we won't learn out Keina Prat. On a Kabbalah, from where do we know Kabbalah has to be L'Shem Bailim? Okay, 1 minute. We'll learn out from Keina Prat. We'll learn out only Kabbalah that it has to be l'shem bailim, but the zrika that has to be l'shem bailim. We learn out with the Rav Ashi. Nafka. We learn out from Rav Ashi. The drasha of Rav Ashi was v'nirtze loy lechaper loy only for the bailim and not for his friend. That's where we know the zrika has to be lishma for the owner of the carbon and not for his chava. Says Gemara Ashkechon, we find that you have to have machshava l'shem bailim be'el nazir shosh shlamim and Allah. How do we know other shlamim? Chitem and el nazir. And if you're going to want to say that we learn out shlamim from el nazir, I could slug it up. Mal el nazir. El nazir is more common than our regular shlamim. Shekein yesh damim yesh imay damim acherim. Because the el shlamim doesn't come alone. It comes together with the carbon carbonis of achates and a oila. which is called damim, because the zikas adam of those kabbanis are on the mizbeach. Maybe the Torah didn't require machshavas l'shem bailim only by el nazir, which is more chamer because it comes together with other kabbanis, but not by other shlamim that come alone. And the Gemara in Cain, if the pasuk was talking about only shalmi nazir, so nichtav, let the Torah write shalmi. Why does it say shlamim plural? My shlamim. Obviously, the Rabbis call shlamim. It's coming to teach us that all shlamim have to be l'shem bailam. Says the Gemara Ashkelon, you find shlamim. You find that you have to have machshavs l'shma, machshavs l'shem bailam by shlamim. Shar kol kadashim and all. How do we know by other kadashim? It has to be done l'shma l'shem bailam. If we say let's learn it out from shlamim, I'll say, hey, mal shlamim is more common than other kabbanis. It has special dinim. She came to an smicha. It needs that the hands of the bailam should lean on the head of the carbon before the shechita, the Zevachim, and the libations of wine that come with the carbon, usnufas chazav sheik, and the raising of the breast and the thigh that the kohen does with the bailim. But by the other kabbanis, there are those kabbanis that don't need smicha or libations, like Chayr Maiso Pesach. Then there are those that don't need Zevachim, doesn't need libations like a Chatas V'Hasham. All of them don't need the Tnufa, the raising of the breast and the thigh, only by Shlamim. So Shlamim is Mochama, Elam Akra. And for the Gemara, only we learn out, it says in the passage by the dinim of the dinim of all the Kabbanis, Zois HaTorah, this is the rule for all the Kabbanis, La'ila, Michel, La'chatz, La'Hasham, La'Meluyim, U'Lezevach HaShlamim. So you see, all the kabbanis are mentioned under one Torah. He kishna kasl shlamim. All the kabbanis are compared to shlamim. We compare one to the other. That you need machshavas l'shma, machshavas l'shem bailam. Ma'ashlam bein shini kodesh bein shini ba'olim be'inon l'shma. Just like the shlamim, whether it's a shinui in kodesh or a shinui in ba'olim, it has to be done l'shma. That you can't be meshana the carbon itself, or you can't be meshana the bayim. Avkol, so too, by all kabbanis, bein shini kodesh, bein shini ba'olim, bein l'shma. Side by kodesh, if he's designated for a chatzis, he cannot have in mind for a eilah, or by ba'olim, and designated the carbon for Reuben, it cannot be done for. You cannot have in mind for Shimon. We learn out from Shlomo for all the kabbanis. Why till now? Why don't we say that even with the Evet, if he shechted the kabbalah shalei l'shma, it should be possible with the Evet? From what do we know from the pasuk that all the kabbalas that was shechted shalei l'shma are kosher? It's a kosher carbon, but it's not considered as he fulfilled his requirement, and the person who brought the carbon would have to bring another carbon. But why don't we say it should be possible? And we had this passage before. And the Gemara asked the same question. This nedava that the pasuk is talking about is a neder, and not a nedava. So the pasuk starts off kasher nadarta, and he ends off with nedava. And there's a chiluk between neder and nedava. A neder is arei a lie, and nedava is arei zu. So why did the pasuk start off with neder and finish off with nedava? Ella im kima. He said, if you did the Aveda of this carbon lishma according to the neder that you made, and you were tishma in verse C, so you did exactly like you promised, then you ain't neder. Then it should be considered as a carbon for you, and you don't have to bring another one. But if you didn't do like you promised, you ain't neder. It should be as a charity to the mizbeach, but you have to bring another carbon to fulfill your requirement. You need both psukim. Because if the Torah would have only written the pasuk of Moitza, then I would have thought I wouldn't know what the pasuk is, which inyan is the pasuk referring to Moitza Sasachat Tishma. It doesn't say befedish in that pasuk the din of the Shema. Maybe it's referring to some other inyan. That's why to compare all the kabbanis to shlamim. where there it explicitly states the din of the Shema, that they all have to be done l'Shema. If the Torah would have only written, if the pasuk would have only written Zeis HaTorah, I would have thought that if it was done Shalei l'Shema, it should be pasul. That's why the pasuk writes Mitzvah starts off with Neder, ends off with Nadav, to tell you that if you did Shalei l'Shema, you weren't Mekayim the Neder, but it's a Nadav, and you still have to fulfill your requirement. And it's not possible. He wants to tell you it's not going to be possible because the pasuk ended off with Nadav, even though it started with the Lashon Neder.